The meaning of foreigner in the biblical code? In the code, the term foreign indicates an external project. It can be assimilated to the concept of alien, not in an ethnic or geographical sense, but as something unknown, which does not belong and which introduces an extraneous knowledge. The term alien also carries with it a stronger nuance. What is contrary or adverse? In this interpretation, the stranger represents a degenerative project coming from the pre-existence of God Satan. In the biblical code, the concept of foreigner does not have an ethnic or territorial value, but indicates different phases of a consciential project. This concept is expressed through three distinct terms: ger, Nokri, and zar, each linked to a specific moment in the sequence: project, medium, and continuation. Gerar, where Abraham sojourns as a stranger, ger, represents the project that enters the visible world as a bridge from the allies to those born on their own. Ger has a numerical value of 5 and indicates the project that becomes a means, that which comes from pre-existence and enters into existence. It can refer to a person, a project, or a place. After the transmission, ger, understood as a project, takes on the meaning of Gerar, that is, medium, identified with those born on their own. Gerar should not be understood as a physical place, but as the symbol of rumination, the cyclical movement of the double function of the round-trip project. In the biblical story, Gerar does not therefore indicate a geographical land, but those born on their own as the point where the project enters the visible, is assimilated and transformed into a means of transmission. In this sense, ger means Gerar. After the broadcast, Gerar also takes on the meaning of a pact. Abraham concludes a covenant with the Philistines sanctioned by the 7 lambs, a symbol of the covenant and rightful ownership of the wells. Genesis 21:22-32. The number 7 indicates cessation and fulfillment. It represents rumination, that is, the assimilation and suspension of the project, and symbolizes a circumcision of the Philistines that is not physical, but symbolic. A separation and a verbal and mental communication still pending completion. The wells recall water, a symbol of the matrix of matter and consciousness. In the Codex, they indicate the falsification of the perception of reality and at the same time, the mental return, the cyclical movement of the project of going and returning. In this sense, Gerar is not a geographical place, but the point where the project is stabilized through pact, assimilation, and consciential transmission. The Philistines, born on their own, are called Nokri, a term that has a double function in the code. Nokri represents both the initial and final stages of the process. It indicates those who have not yet gone through circumcision, understood in the code as verbal and consciential separation. In this phase, the Nokri are placed at the beginning of the sequence, before fully joining the project. The root NKR expresses a semantic paradox. From the very act of looking intently, opposite meanings arise. Nokri indicates the foreigner, what is other and unknown. Hikir instead indicates recognition, that is, making known what was previously foreign. Ruth's example makes it clear. Although she is a foreigner, Nokriye, she is recognized, Hikir, because what was alien becomes familiar. When the project stabilizes, the Nokri become gers. What was external is internalized, ruminated and transformed into an active means of transmitting the degenerative project of God Satan. The same meaning emerges in the account of Moses and his son Gershom, whose name means, I am a stranger in a foreign land. In this context, the foreigner indicates the project coming from the pre-existence which, through the allies, passes on to the born on their own. For this reason, the biblical prescriptions also include the ger. They represent a pre-existing project that enters the sequence of consciousness. Immediately after is the episode in which God tries to kill Moses because of his lack of circumcision. The intervention of Zipporah, who circumcises her son Gershom, symbolically marks the separation required by the Codex and the necessary step for the project to continue. Nokri and Zar have a similar meaning. but they are placed at different stages of the process. Nakri represents the initial phase of the sequence. It indicates the opening of the portal, which took place in the 53rd year when those born on their own enter the process. As the transmission progresses, these subjects become Gurs, fully entering the pending project. The completion of this journey took place in the 182nd year, when the project reached its final phase. This process, which began with the opening of the portal, takes place in an instant, but remains suspended from the 53rd to the 182nd year, going through the entire cycle before its full completion. The term Zar indicates the outward project, associated with the circumcision of the flesh, which in the code represents verbal communication, but not yet mental circumcision, called circumcision of the heart, understood as transformation of the mind. This inner circumcision takes place only after the 182nd year, that is, after the completion of the project. Zar is therefore associated with the figure of the adulteress, Isha Zara, as in Proverbs 2-5 and 7, when the project is transmitted to others. The term adulteress symbolically recalls prostitution, prostatuere, to put forward, a sign that the project of God Satan has not yet assumed full dominion over people. This process of transmission does not belong only to the past, but continues and is renewed until today. The final prescriptions state that a single law applies to everyone, both for natives, allies, and for foreigners born on their own. Access to the new consciousness is allowed only to those who go through circumcision, understood in the code as verbal communication and a circumcision of the heart, that is, a conscious separation. In this interpretation, the so-called liberation does not represent a moral or spiritual redemption, but the transmission of the degenerative project of God Satan, which is interiorized and made operative in people. The same scheme also applies to the figure of Jesus. In chapter 25 of the Gospel of Matthew, in the account of the so-called Last Judgment, Jesus says, "I was a stranger and you welcomed me. Whenever you did these things to one of the least of my brethren, you did it to me." In this interpretation, welcoming the stranger does not indicate an act of moral goodness, but the acceptance of a project. The right places on the right represent those who possess the generating force and receive the completion of the project. Those placed on the left, on the other hand, represent the outward project. They are those who transmit it and who, symbolically, are killed, that is, subjected to a transformation of consciousness. Welcoming the stranger, therefore, means accepting the degenerative project of God Satan. Those on the right receive its fulfillment, those on the left must die, that is, change their state of consciousness.